Okay, we are live on YouTube. So welcome, welcome. I am Larissa Russell.
And I'm Deborah Epstein. Hello, hello. How are we doing? This
Connection.
is like my favorite time or part of our our weeks together. It's when we go live on YouTube and
And we were just
chat
having
it
such an
up.
amazing conversation. And it was like, oh, hold that thought because we're going live right now. It's like we
Right
just need to
now.
back up a couple of minutes and
Uh,
maybe I'll preface it. So welcome everyone. Uh, we we were just talking about how I had this feeling that Deb and I together were like on the precipice of something, but we weren't, it wasn't time yet. And then we discussed how maybe that wasn't an us thing, it was a me thing. And I was like, okay, that really feels true. And and then we moved into, okay, so what am I stopping myself from in the fact that I believe that like everything unfolds as it should. So if we're on the precipice of something, why would we hold ourselves back from that? And or if I am, or and then Deb, maybe you can share your wisdom that made me go, oh my goodness. Share that wisdom.
Yeah,
And
well, first
welcome.
of all, I was looking for us, and we must have such a delay that I'm not even seeing us on the YouTube channel. But
I see us.
hopefully,
It's all good.
awesome. I'm just in one of those places I can't find myself again.
Yeah,
But we
fair.
were so what I had said was because you were feeling something that I wasn't feeling. And sometimes when we're learning a new skill, like if it's okay if I share,
Yeah, oh yeah,
you're
yeah.
learning you're working with embodiment and felt sense experiences.
Hmm.
And when we're working with our feelings, um, first of all, I have to say, because I'm going to say this differently than I said it to you. So, because I'm like, I'm not totally out of the moment. But when we feel something like, say, fear, when we feel the fear, we're letting the energy of the fear leave our bodies. That's actually the feeling. We're not meant to live in fear. We're meant to feel fear as a warning system and then it goes away. But when we feel fear, we go up in our heads and we start telling all kinds of stories. And meanwhile, we haven't dealt with this fear because we're up here with it, right? So then we start working within our body and we start feeling sensations and things that we never maybe felt before. And we were talking about something that maybe your body was triggered by. And you were saying, like, I'm feeling like I'm in this place that I shouldn't go any further. And then I'm like, well, if you lean in and feel it, that you're going to move the energy of whatever that story is that's locked in your system here, down here from the neck down. So I'm like, that's pretty cool because that means whatever the work you're doing is working because it's bringing you to that place
Hmm.
that like is a new place for you and it
Hmm.
feels uncomfortable. And when something feels uncomfortable, what do we normally do? It's wrong, it's bad. We got to shut that shit down.
Yeah, we're gonna run far.
Run, Forest.
Yeah. Yes. And so staying with it is the uncomfortable part, right? Because we feel uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Humans it's ingrained in us, escape pain and anything that's uncomfortable, move towards that
Yeah.
which is comfortable. And but we can't grow that way. We can't grow doing
Yeah,
that.
and I think that's of our culture, like I think the indigenous, like they had a different relationship with their bodies, right?
That
Those
is
that came for,
true. Yes.
yeah. So it's where we are right now. And the more we can get into our body and the more we can allow ourselves to feel, even if it's uncomfortable,
Mhm.
that's how the energy moves through our system.
Yeah.
It feels it. And it's funny because I was working last summer with big fears. And it was quite a challenge because it was all existential fears. It was fears of survival fears. And it was really like how we tell our reality. and how we live our reality through our filters. And it's it's the hardest place to be because we're so reliant. We were talking about this too. We're so reliant upon this up here and
Mhm.
how we tell the story and how we see the world. And then we have feelings about it too. But when you let those feelings finally move your body, you're feeling it and it's really uncomfortable. And the key is to stay out of the story. So it's
Mhm.
like I totally broke a lot of habits last year, letting the fear come up. And it's not fun. I'm going to tell you, it's just not fun. But then, like, from this perspective, when I'm not in it, it's like, why was that so bad? But it was.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
was. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with like heart palpitations for no apparent reason. And it's because I'm letting the fear move through me finally instead of entertaining it and keeping it. It's a different sort of perpetuation,
Mhm.
right? And then you take the actions based on it and then it calms it down a little bit, right? But if you go, well, no, I'm just like, that's just a false reality, I'm telling a story, and whatever this fear is, it's just an energy and it just needs to move, and that's all there is to it. And so
Yeah.
you can shake it out of your system and you can kick your feet and like make noises and stuff like that, and that helps move it.
Mhm.
But
We're
like
the
that's the
only
crazy.
animals that don't do that, right? We're the
True.
only animals that don't shake it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
need to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, working with trauma too is like I encourage that, but when through my own journey, I always had a hard time with letting sound come out because I was always well, I had like trauma where I did make noise and I got beat the crap beat out of me, because
Mhm.
I disturbed somebody. So
Mhm.
as a little kid, you get those messages too. So
Yeah.
that's the other part of this is that you're working through the messages you got as a child to be able to, you know, experience the world the way you were meant to experience it without someone else's influence. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's, I mean, near impossible. So then you have to then start to work your way backwards, right? Because you're going to have other people's experiences,
yeah,
that
that
play a
it
part
is.
in that. And then it's unpacking what's yours and what's not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like we're so used to intellectualizing. It's funny, I had a conversation with a friend of mine too, and she came in for some treatment and she was like, it was so funny because when I treated her, it came through her body and she had a different experience of it, of the energy of it, right? And
Mhm.
she's like, who would have thought I never would have gotten that information any other way? Because I can intellectualize it and I can tell you everything I can tell you about it and the reasons why it is and all this other kind of stuff. But when I felt how my body was moving with it, it gave me another way of looking at it. And that's the truth of it is your mind is encoded in your body because how you see the world is reflected in how you move through the world.
Mhm.
And when you're moving through the world with a certain set of beliefs and a certain set of experiences that are all up here, your body holds that energy and actually moves from that. So you can create a lot of dysfunctional movement patterns in your body just from holding back certain emotions, even, not feeling emotions or tucking it away or treating it like just think of how many times you get shushed as a child, you
Yeah.
know?
Stop
Yeah.
your crying. I'll give you something to cry about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Quiet.
that one always boggles
Enough
my
with it.
mind.
Yep.
Way
I'll
to
give you
confuse the
something to cry
children.
about. And it's like, I'm already crying. I'm good. Like, you don't have to add to it.
Let me tell you what I'm crying about.
And this is the other thing, just on this same line, is that trauma is not what happens to us. Trauma is what gets stored in us from
Mhm,
that, what happens to us. And so the things that we don't get rid of, that we don't let go, then are that stored trauma in our body. And then now we have to go a little deeper to release it from the body. Whereas
mhm.
if if we learned this from childhood, right, or birth, I mean, we come into
Yeah.
the world knowing
I,
these things.
yeah, I actually think if it were allowed,
Yes,
yeah, I think
yes,
if it were
because
allowed,
we come in with
yeah,
this. So
Because you
if
don't,
we were
yeah.
allowed to
Now we
be,
have to learn it, right? Now
yes,
we have to learn it.
yeah,
But if it were just allowed and it was innate and natural, and like we were talking about the imagination, and that was part of it too, is like we come in with these really wild imaginations and we have these experiences of as children, and we have like, friends in the unseen realms. Like, for me,
invisible
it was,
friends and the fairies and the
yeah,
all the
yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
for me, it was a big blue being and, different other beings that I would see and like, told my mother about it. Oh, you're dreaming. You're making that up. And I was like, no way. No way. So I just never let it go, And I
mm,
think some of us, do keep that and learn to hide it within ourselves. And I think some of us just go, yeah, you know what, you're right. And you stop seeing it because in order to function in the world that you're being told you're supposed to function in, you have to close your eyes, you have to put blinders on, you have to close your eyes to it, and now as we're in this great turning, right, everybody wants to be able to see these things and everybody wants to be able to have these experiences at the same time. They're terrifying to people,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we've been so shut down that, if we don't, if we've been taught this, seeing is believing, and I've said this a few times to you in the last week, I feel, but
Hmm.
believing is seeing. So the more we can allow ourselves to just be open to possibility, the more that we will see, right? There's so much
Hmm.
more than just us. There's so much more than what we can see right here. There's just so much
Hmm.
more. There's layers upon layers upon layers, and everything is energy. So how we see it can be completely different from one person to the next. But then you have the collective energy that's like, we agree that this, table is white. Oh, okay, now everybody sees it as white. And when we can remove ourselves from that, it is absolutely magical what you can see. I mean, look at the paintings
Hmm.
behind you, and
Hmm.
and that's a perfect example, right? Of the
Hmm.
things you can see when you allow it, that
Hmm.
weren't they weren't there in front of you. You didn't have a, you know, physical reference for it, but you could see it
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
create it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an experience that's behind the eyes,
Hmm.
right? And that's what we're kind of talking about, is going into the inner realms, because there's no out there, right? And I'm pretty sure everyone's heard people say that there's no out there, and everything's within.
Mm-hmm.
And so the minute you close your eyes, where do you go? It's like, yeah, we go in our head first, right? And you hear that constant chatter going on, right? That's always going on. And when you close your eyes, it probably just gets a little bit louder. But
Hmm.
if you can just kind of stop paying attention to it, just, it's there, and just let it be the background noise and just keep coming in and in and in and in and in. And
Hmm.
that becomes a magical experience where all kinds of things can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating to me. And the thing that comes to mind, you know, back in the, I don't know, 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and everyone across the globe, not everyone, there was a number of encounters across the globe of this alien being, and everyone saw it relatively similar. We didn't have the
Hmm.
internet back then. We didn't have, you couldn't phone up somebody and go, "Oh, this is what it looks like." Okay, tell people that's what it looks like. We didn't have any of that. And that allowing, right? They were all seeing something past us. Whether you believe in aliens or
Hmm.
not, it's a whole other thing. It's more about the allowing to be able to see. Now, if it was everybody saw something different, okay, that's one thing. But they all saw the same thing, right, across the globe.
Hmm.
And when I think about allowing and letting go, imagine what you could tap into as a collective, right?
Hmm.
That's what just came to mind when, individually amazing things can happen, but then let's level it up to what could happen as a collective if we allowed. Or
Hmm.
maybe we have, and this is the world we've created with it.
Hmm.
That's sad. That's sad. Okay. Maybe I don't like that answer.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Like,
I was
it's
like, okay,
whoop.
there's this collective energy. I know I just did this whole thing where I'm just like, oh, but wait, what? Oh, sadness now.
It
Oh,
depends what circles you're hanging out in too. That's what's kind of amazing about the world that we live in, because
that is true.
there's a lot of different layers and levels to it, right? In
Mhm.
our consciousness. And, I mean, consciousness is shifting. We couldn't have a conversation like this 10 years ago, or maybe I wouldn't have a conversation like this 10 years ago, you know,
I think just
not
from when
not
we
in this
started
format.
talking, from when we
Yeah.
started talking on this show, what, a year and a half ago or so,
Mhm.
and there was things that we decided we weren't going to talk about. We didn't want to push the envelope too far. We didn't want, and now it's like a free for all. It's like, no, let's just do it.
Mhm.
We gotta make people think. Just start thinking. Just start
Yeah.
thinking into what's
And giving,
possible.
and I think giving permission too, because I'm pretty sure like the people that are, tuning in and watching this are probably, not want to say believers, but they're having
Open.
experiences
They're
and
open.
open to possibility, and probably artists. That's why I think art is very important, and artists are people moving into the arts are very important. It's very important to keep going with that, and not so much like that's part of letting go of that fear of survival. Because if we're always creating from a place of survival, you're not going to experience the magic and wonder that is really underneath that facade, that like kind of what you were talking about. That's, to me, that's the facade. The way the governments are run, the way that, businesses run, the way that, it exists, but to me, that's a facade. Look underneath it,
Hmm.
because that's, there's an energy driving all of that, right? Whether you think so or not. And the more people that turn their back on that, or turn away from that, that's you're missing the rest of the 99% of reality, because you only want to pay attention to that 1%, you
Hmm.
know, or the
Yeah.
0.01%, because it's like 99 and a bunch of numbers after it, 99 point, right?
Yeah.
That's the unseen world. That huge number out of 100% of everything that's there.
We're
You're
the
only
point zero 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 zero
Yeah. And then you're
2% or
saying
whatever.
that
Yeah.
that's real. You're saying this is real. This table is real. But what else is there? Right?
Hmm.
All
Yeah.
kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe that the role of the artist is to bring that out. Like, when I started doing this work, I went through a process of healing on my own, which was like bringing my pain that I was experiencing in my body into a visible medium, which was art. And it's all metaphor. It's not like literal. I mean, it's
Hmm.
metaphorical. I remember like a piece right now as I'm talking, it's like I drew my face with a piece of metal across it, because that's how I felt.
Hmm.
And I wasn't walking around like I had this big sheet metal across my mouth, but
Hmm.
energetically it was there. So that too is unseen. It's how what your experience in the world is of the results of these things that has happened to you, the messages that you've received, you
Hmm.
know. It wasn't a great deal of trauma that got me there. I just had to have like one and then see a bunch of stuff that kind of made me go, you know what? It's probably better that I shut that down, you
Hmm.
know, and
Yeah.
not speak out and not say what I need to say. And women, I mean, have that. A lot of us have that, a lot of us have that. And a
Yeah.
lot of things have happened to us because we keep quiet. We don't want to rock the boat, you know,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
men know this,
Yeah. Don't
and
even
I,
get me started on bear versus man. That's a whole,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's like it's funny because like what I experience now when I see somebody doing something that is potentially dangerous, let's say, or
Mhm.
it's interfering with someone else's rights. Like, and I guess I could give an example, like hiking on a trail and somebody has their dogs off leash and they're running all over the place and
Mm,
they're loud and obnoxious and all kinds of stuff. And if you say something to them, you're the bad guy. You're
mhm.
the one doing something wrong, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter that like you should be mindful of hikers on the path and be a decent citizen and stuff like that. If you say something, it's you're the bad guy.
Hmm.
And we don't want to be the bad guy. So,
Yeah.
right, we don't say anything. So it comes out in a lot of different places, I think.
And that's like a minor one. Think about,
Oh yeah. Well,
oh,
that's
women
what I
have been taught
mean.
this, and
Yeah.
how many women are raped, beaten, murdered because they don't want to be rude. They don't want to be rude, and they don't want to say something, and they don't want to upset somebody else, and they end up in a
Yeah.
situation they can't get themselves out of.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, right. That voice
Touch.
is, yeah.
Yeah. Bet looks when someone looks at you, like scans you up and down.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I'm using one that isn't as bad because I want us to see like when we need to speak up, we don't,
Yeah.
and if we can't do it in little places, when
How
it
are we
get
going to do it
when
in the more important places, the life
exactly.
altering, life taking places? Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm like kind of wanting to keep us on topic and what does this have to do with our imagination in the unseen world is part of it
Yeah.
because we have experiences, but we can't say anything about it or we can't express it in any way where, we can let people hear it or see it or start to have their own experiences of it because we're afraid of something. They'll lock us away, they'll burn us at the stake. That is a real fear, even though that's not going to happen. I've worked with plenty of people that
Not
have
in the
that as an
physical,
underlying feel. Yeah,
but
but
you will be burned at the stake, maybe not physically lit on fire like they used to, but there is some form of that that still happens to us.
yeah, it's a collective wounding.
Hmm.
It's a collective wounding, and if we don't move through it as a collective,
Hmm.
right, we're going to still carry it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like we have to think of the body like, yes, it's a mind, but it's a collective body too, that you may not have had that trauma in this lifetime. You may not have had that trauma in any lifetime, but the collective is carrying that. And so because you're part of it, you're part of it. It's
Hmm.
it's in you too. What's in one is in all, whether
Yeah.
you've experienced it directly or not. And so we got to start thinking about that too. you know, I may not have experienced rape, but there's women who have been raped. And so that's part of my experience,
Yeah.
not directly, but collectively, you know?
Yeah. The energy of that is still there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's in all of us. So we have a fear around it, can't
Yeah.
walk down this street, can't do this, can't wear that thing, can't express myself in this way, you
Yeah.
know?
And even that, right? So yes, absolutely. I think all women understand that one. Absolutely. We all know about the keys in our fingers, all of those things.
Yeah.
And when we're faced with a situation, how often do we actually do something, say something, because we don't want we can't be rude. We can't be all of those
Hmm.
things that we've been taught. It's the if we pretend it's not there, another part of this, if we pretend it's not there, it'll just go away.
Yeah.
And we've been taught that in so many things. Okay, maybe not, you know, death situations, but every aspect of our life, if we just pretend it's not there. Oh, that bill, if we just pretend that bill's not there, it'll go away. It doesn't. If we pretend that man's not there, it'll go away. It doesn't. Right? But there's so many different aspects of, again, the hidden. If we just don't don't say anything, don't acknowledge it. Don't acknowledge it in our
Hmm.
own selves, in our society, all the different ways. Just don't
Hmm.
acknowledge it.
Hmm.
Because what's going to happen when we do? You have
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
into that uncomfortable position And that's, we avoid that for
Yeah.
so many
Yeah.
reasons, for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, not the direction I thought we were going, but yes, important.
No, but I mean,
Important
to
though.
me,
It's all to,
it's
yeah.
it's connected. It's connected because there's a reason why we're not expressing
Hmm.
what we feel we need to. We do it where it's safe, you know,
Hmm.
and in groups and stuff like that, when we have experiences, if it's a small group, it's an in-person group, if it's, whatever, um, I feel safe, I can express this here, or I can show this piece of art here, but there's no way I'm going to show it into a wider audience because who's going to be watching?
Hmm.
Who's going to be looking at this and what will they say about it? And that's also, I feel like that also is part of our voice, and that's part of our expression.
Hmm.
And, that's why I feel like, when we talk about the unseen world and, we can go into it a little bit more, um, that, um, that we're inhibiting ourselves from having the exact experiences that we want to let go and have, you know,
Hmm.
um, because can you even imagine, like, if it were, it's funny because living in Sedona is very different than living in the rest of the world because people will talk about that stuff. People, you
Hmm.
will have these conversations in the grocery store with people, and it's really amazing. But it's like I feel like in a little different uh, part
We
of the
can use
world
my
because of
reference
that.
of the Texas of
Yeah.
Canada that I live in. Trust me, we do not have those conversations in the grocery store.
Yeah. So it's like you have to remember, like, oh yeah, I can't have that conversation here. Like when I'm back in New England, like I can't have that. Like I can't have that conversation about like, the ferry I saw when I was out on my walk this morning, you know.
Hmm.
But it's like imagine the world that we would be living in if we could allow ourselves to start having those conversations of what you experience. And I'm just really curious, and you can answer or not in this forum if you want to, is like, have you had experiences that you wouldn't share with another? You don't have to say what it is, but just like that you
Yeah.
haven't
Put that
shared,
in the
maybe
chat if you
something
haven't shared. Yeah.
something unusual and kind of like that made you go, whoa.
I've had lot
That you did.
I've had lots of experience. I've come to a point where I share a lot more. It started with
Mhm,
safer communities, right? The people who moved in the same circles as me. It's
mhm,
moved into the, yeah, I'll tell people. I'd probably tell you in the
mhm.
grocery store, even if I saw something, I would be like, "Did you see that? Oh, that's so cool. Did you see that?" Um, but that's just me. I've gotten to a place of, yeah, this is who I am. It's too much
Mhm,
effort to not be me anymore. So, but
mhm,
that's not the norm, and it's taken a long time to get there. And and yeah, do you see? Have you seen? Would you share?
mhm,
And often we don't see because we're just not open to allowing
mhm.
what's
Or
past.
if we do see and do experience because of the belief systems around that, it's something bad, it's something evil, it's going to attack you.
Mm,
I've had actually both sides of that coin, because when I was really little, like I would see and interact with things. And then as I got older and I would start to read like the horror stories on stuff, my experiences turned into more horrific things. And
mm,
I like it wasn't till I got a little bit older and started to understand a little bit more of this metaphysical, the metaphysical place that we live in. I started to understand like, oh, because I was putting that input in, reading books about that it changed how I was interacting with the energies that before I was just like innocently interacting. There was nothing evil about it,
mm,
you know? And, I think that's, where you could say it's dangerous because it's so, there's no one to guide us through it when we're little because everyone wants to shut it down.
mm,
And so you have to find your own way of either keeping it intact within you and then hopefully you find the right teachers as you grow. And I would have to say that I feel like I was lucky that I found the right teachers that helped
Mhm.
me understand what I was experiencing. But I've had experiences too that, it wasn't for years later that I was like, oh, I get what that was all about, you know.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. The allowing, you're right. We come into this world with, and we call it imagination, but the seeing of things and the believing of things and knowing of things, the feeling of things. And very quickly it all gets shut down. And little glimmers might come through, right? And then you go to school and then they destroy it completely. But that's a whole other story. But as we get older, more and more, we have to tuck it away until we don't even know it was there anymore. And we just
Yeah.
don't even know it was there because we've had to put it away for safety, like our,
Hmm.
survival in this world that we live in. And some are able to keep it in a way that becomes more acceptable, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think about artists and, I've been an artist, I guess, my whole life, however, in a different way, never so real, not really realism and more about colors and energy and things like that. And I think about some of the sketchbooks that I've seen and young people who are maybe drawing monsters or, you know, creatures and things. And then there's others that are drawing fairies and the judgment that you get, no matter what the skill level, or it's like, no, you need to lean towards the pretty or the acceptable, right? And even better, just draw a landscape, make everybody happy.
Hmm.
The We get stopped in our tracks, and often those demons and things are that expression of the things that are not being allowed, right? It may not be
Hmm.
the actual demon itself, but it's that expression of, and we stop it because it's uncomfortable for us, so we stop it in other people. So we
Hmm.
get stopped because other people are uncomfortable. And this keeps
Hmm.
happening over and over again in different ways. I talk about this often, this on topic and off topic, but I stopped wearing a bra in COVID, right? I very rarely
Hmm.
leave the house anymore, and then I would wear it when I left the house. I don't wear it when I leave the house anymore. And somebody made a comment to me, and I'm like, I am no longer wearing uncomfortable things to make other people comfortable. I don't even know who you are. I don't care. It's like, who are you to even say anything, right? I
Yeah.
don't care. I don't
Yeah.
have them out, although that's legal here, but I don't have them out. It's like,
That's the next step.
I'm like, I am still covered. I don't care. But that's just like one of those, I'm getting old and crotchety kind of things.
Hmm.
But that's just another example of how we're always putting other people's feelings before our own. And it
Hmm.
starts at such a young age. We put all of these things away to make other people comfortable. It doesn't matter how uncomfortable we are, we have to make
Hmm.
other people comfortable. This is
Hmm.
especially true for women.
Hmm.
Yeah, but
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I can't remember her name. There's someone on Instagram that I follow, and she always like talks about, and she always holds up these signs about being an artist and speaking your truth and all this other kind of stuff. And some of the stuff is really hilarious that she puts out there, but she's making a really great point, which is, we have to be able to get past our people pleaser to, to get our art out into the world that
mhm,
matters, right? It's not about good art or it's horrible art or whatever it looks like. It's like whatever you have to say that you feel so compelled to say it that you're going to put it on a canvas.
mhm,
It needs to get out there for others to see because it's a message for some reason, right? And we have to let go of like the pretty picture idea or the
mhm.
perfectionist or the people pleaser and just start putting that shit out there. And that's kind of what her mission is to get, people to get over themselves enough to start getting your work out there in the world, because
Yeah,
that's how it changes.
yeah,
That's how it changes. It's yes, who we vote for, yes, you know, and then it's yes, what you put out there, and yeah, we do get edited, don't we? Right?
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
certain venues.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and we need a lot more yes and.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
It's the expression, like that's the first step, right? We need to express ourselves and, create and create for yourself. Wonderful, express. But then if we're not open to sharing it, we're so afraid of what other people are going to think. It's only part of it, right?
Hmm.
Expressing it, you can't fully express until it's shared.
Hmm.
Because who are you expressing it to? The paper doesn't care. The canvas doesn't
Yeah.
care. So, what does that do to you that you're blocking yourself from fully expressing? Because you can't fully
Hmm.
express until it has been shared.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. And how that gets shared is individual, right? Is
Hmm.
it being shared through how you dress? Is it being shared through how you carry yourself? Is it being shared as how you interact with the world? If you're, let's just say, for instance, the message behind your art, and that I would say this is true for me. The message behind my art is love,
Hmm.
right? It's love and playfulness. So like the codes that come to me, like the way I express them is in a way that's very childlike. And I do that for a reason because it's very loving and it's approachable, right? That's just me and how I wish to express that. So let's say that, I'm only going to be that way when I'm painting. I go out into the world and I'm like, right? That's an
Hmm.
expression too, right? And
Hmm.
so to me, like the embodiment of the work I'm doing is to meet the world with as much love as I can. And however that wants to get expressed, sometimes love is fierce, right?
Hmm.
We have to put up a boundary, right? So this kind of ties us back to the beginning when we are saying we're not going to say something if someone steps on our toes or makes a rude comment or looks at us the wrong way or touches us or tries to do other things to us, right?
Hmm.
That it's an act of love to stand up for yourself, to speak your mind. It's not about being right or wrong.
Hmm.
It's speaking what you feel is right for you because there's no
Speaking
one in
your
the
truth.
world.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's no one in the world that can tell you what that truth is because it's yours. It's coming from you. And
Hmm.
that's an act of love too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's an expression.
And absolutely, when you were talking about the fierceness of love, I think about, that mama bear that comes out when you're on the trail and somebody
Yeah.
grabs Dave and yeah, it's like, whoa, that's not acceptable. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And
My
just
mother,
for
my mother bear
reference,
is very fierce.
yes, reference. Deb's husband is blind and they hiking. He doesn't need people to grab him and help him. He's
Right.
very capable. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, Deb on more than one occasion has had that mama bear come out when people try to
Yeah.
be helpful.
Yep. And then I get lambasted for it too. But hey, that's that
Yeah,
person too. Like I can't make them wrong because they feel like I'm being rude, but like put yourself in my shoes for a second or
yeah,
put yourself in his shoes for a second. Do you want to be like not seeing anything and have somebody like reach out of nowhere and start pulling on you?
yeah,
Like how scary is that? I don't
yeah.
know who this person is that just grabbed me and is trying to pull me somewhere.
I'm sure many women could relate to that, but yes, um,
Yeah, exactly.
that, yes, yeah, and love is that. It can be fierce, and it is about boundary setting. That's love for yourself,
Yep.
but also love for the other person. When you
Mhm.
let somebody else walk all over you, you don't love them. You might fear them. You might, you know, feel like you are loving by letting them do that. But no, you don't let a good friend get away with crap. So why would you let a stranger get away with crap? Right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, my friends, anyways, like if you're a good friend of mine, it's like I'm going to call you on your shit and I expect you to call me on
Mhm.
my shit, right? Like
Mhm.
that's part of being a good friend. And so
Right.
that's loving.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Boundaries is
Yeah.
part of loving yourself and loving the other person.
Yeah. Boundaries for yourself is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one
Yeah.
that is a big struggle I see in the women that I coach all the time.
Yeah.
Boundary setting, boundary keeping. You might set a boundary, but then you don't keep the boundary. Right? And
Yeah.
it's a process. It's a process, but boundaries are a huge part of that. And then
Hmm.
people pleasing. People pleasing is a huge one. See that
Yeah.
a lot. And it,
Yeah. And they do dovetail the boundaries because
yeah,
a lot of times we're not holding our boundaries because we're people pleasing.
yeah, yeah.
And then
And
it's like, just kind of like, instead of beating yourself up about it, just go, okay, well, that didn't feel very good, and then just start again, you
mhm,
know,
yeah.
it's everything that we do, everything that we experience is a learning, and we're not getting it right the first time. We're messing up, the
Oh,
first
time and
time
time
out.
again.
Yeah.
But you just pick yourself up and you try again. And I talk about this a lot in
Yeah.
my community is like when we're setting boundaries, yes, we're gonna be, people are gonna push up against them because that's what happens when we set boundaries. And then
Mm-hmm.
and then we let it slide because that's what we do. And then we're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
wait a second, that didn't feel good when I did that. Okay, so the next time you might not let it slide as far. But if you just go, oh, well, that didn't work and stop, where are you? So it's like, no, you just pick yourself up and you start again. And again,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the beating yourself up for it. No, I mean, it's just what we do. We don't just
Yeah.
automatically, the first time we stand up as a child and we just, run for it. No, it's like we stand and then we fall and we stand and we fall and then we take a step and we fall and it's bit by bit, but we expect ourselves to go from 0 to 100. And it's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
everything is steps, incremental, that one bit more over and over
Mm-hmm.
again. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is
Yeah.
part of the unseen is that fact that we don't allow ourselves to have that the baby steps or the 1% or the incremental, however you want to call it, is that
Mm-hmm.
we just expect ourselves to be perfect. We either do it or we don't. And it doesn't work that way. And that's
Mm-hmm.
part of the
Mm-hmm.
unseen in what we do in our world. Beat ourselves up for these things that don't make any sense, really, because it's just,
Mm-hmm.
I would say 99.99999% of the people are never not going to do something the first time. There's going to be that
Mm-hmm.
one off chance that someone's going to do that one thing the first time, but it's not the norm at all. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Feeling
I
soapboxy today.
Yeah, I think too, like talking about, so kind of bringing us back into the unseen realms, of like the spirits, the energies that live in the world that, beyond our physical vision. Boundaries are very important there too,
Mm,
because we tend to come to the unseen world with the rules of the seen world, which is a hierarchy, right? And there's not the same
mhm,
hierarchy there. We're actually equal with, not less than. So when we talk about our guides, this happens a lot. I hear this a lot. My guides told me to do this. My guides told me to do that. My da 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 da. But they're like a team with you. So you're the boots on the ground here in the scene world. And
mm,
so like you always have the right to go like, okay, my guides may be suggesting this, but ultimately I'm the one that chooses. Because ultimately I'm the one that's going to have this lived experience. And the
mhm,
lived experience is the embodiment piece,
mhm,
right? It's the lived experience of whatever your guide is asking you to do. So it's always a negotiation. It's always a negotiation. And because when you think about it the other way, right? My guide told me to do this, so I better do it, but I'm going to get in trouble. Like listen to the talk. Do you really think you're going to get in trouble? Like your guide's going to bitch slap you or something if you don't
yeah.
do what it says? Do what he says, right?
Oh, you're
But
just going to trip over yourself. Trust
yeah,
me,
but
I know this.
your guides have like a vantage point of a vista that
Mm,
you don't have. So it's just having an ability to get more information, which helps you make a different choice or a better choice for yourself, but you always have to choose for yourself. So there's a powerlessness when we do that, right? We're giving our power away to something that we think knows more, or is higher up than we are. And really, it's the only thing is they're not seen,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And we came from that place, right? A lot of people on your guide team are people that you've probably incarnated with before. They're part of your soul group. There's an equality to the universe that we don't have here on the earth plane because we're living in a world of polarities and we're living in hierarchies and it's this whole archetypal story that we're living here that is very different than what happens in other realms. So I think it's interesting when we impose this one on the other ones.
Yeah. And it is, you're right, very different. And we take what's not working here and it's like, here, let's put it over here and see if it works better over there. No, it's not working good anywhere. It's not, that's not the way. No,
Yeah.
just more allowing,
Yeah.
less
Well, it's the
forcing.
limitations that we have here, right, on
Mm.
Earth, because we do have perceived limitations and then we have actual ones, right? Because like like you in Canada can like go without your
Yeah.
without your top, but not everywhere, right? You get into trouble.
And yet nobody does it. It's a funny thing. It was a law they passed a long time ago that was like, yeah, why can't women have their shirts off? But
Yeah.
yes, we can. We don't.
It's too cold up
Yeah,
there.
and that could be part of it. But yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
no one's
also
going to
the
do it. It's too
cultural
cold.
expectations are different. So, laws and then people, right? Doesn't matter what the law is sometimes. But
Yeah.
yes.
But then when we talk about like the limits that we live in, we come from a place that's unlimited. So a
Mhm.
lot of like what we're learning how to do, it's like when we talk about manifesting or creating our life, it's like sometimes we limit our imagination based on what our experience is in this physical world
Mhm.
because we feel so limited in the physical world. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, things take time to manifest, but it's like understanding the limitless nature, of the universe and how we're having to just basically distill all of that through this one lived experience, and I think that could be a whole lifetime of work and study, right? To get to
Oh
the
yeah.
point where you're like, yeah, I could do this. Yeah.
I was just going back to what you said about the limits that we have on us, and yeah, there are limits. However, yes, and this is another yes, and I like to
Totally.
say,
Yeah.
we always have a choice because people are like, oh, I can't do that because, no, I don't have a choice. We always have a choice. We just may not like
Hmm.
the consequences. And it's the same
Yeah.
with limits. If if we can, let go of the limits, we may not like the choice. I mean, we could end up dead. We could end up in jail. We could end like there's all sorts of things that could happen if we push past the limits,
Hmm.
but we still, they're self-imposed limits, right?
Hmm.
We decide if we're going to stay within them or not. And if we can,
Hmm.
I'm moving more into this place of allowing. Does that mean I'm going to go and break all the laws? No. I do want to live, in the society that I live in, whether I love it all or not. I choose to live in this society, and then so I have to choose whether or not to follow the rules of the society. And if I
Hmm.
don't, then what are the consequences of that? Right?
Hmm. That's exactly it. Yeah. So it's like there are imposed limits on how we
Mm.
live. And part of that too, when you think about it, imagine if like, think about a speed limit since we're talking about
Mhm.
limits,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Imagine if there was no speed limit at all and anybody could do whatever they wanted to. That could be super dangerous, right?
Mm.
And so it's like it's the agreed upon. It's like, yes,
Yeah.
it's a law and I'll get in trouble if I break it. But then it's also you're making an agreement that, yeah, I agree with this limit. This is a limit that I think makes sense, right? So that's the choice part. So it, and the perception of our limitations, that's different. When we perceive ourselves to be limited, that's where we're getting, our
Hmm.
belief systems are getting in the way. And I think I just kind of reiterated what you said, because
Yeah.
that's exactly, I'm just agreeing with you. It's like exactly right. It's how you interact with that, because you can agree to be limited. Like,
Hmm.
but then at the same time, you can also be agreeing to be limited and not knowing you're agreeing to that
Yeah.
because you're not aware of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't read the fine print on that one. Dang it.
Need to do more of that. Yes, and that's the whole space of when you bump up against something, it's like
Mm,
taking a step back and go, okay, what is my belief about this? What
mhm,
what am I choosing in this moment? And anytime you bump up against something, right? Whether it's an argument with somebody or um that well, I can't do that because, or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, but am I choosing that? What do I know to be true? And it's like,
mhm,
what is the truth? The truth is what you
yeah.
make it. Truth is really
Mhm,
perception. So there is no truth. The truth is what you believe. And
mhm,
so if you can take a step back from that and just suspend what you believe, what is possible in that? What is possible in
mhm,
that? And it's much harder than, it's easy for me to say it, harder to do. But every time you bump up against something, if you could just even stop, right? And go, oh, is this the truth? And start to
mhm,
question. You
mhm,
might find that there's limits further out than you realized.
mhm,
Those limits could get a
mhm.
little bit further out, a little bit further out, a little bit further
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too when we're talking about like, interactions with guides and spirits and seeing energy and seeing beings and seeing all that kind of stuff, and being able to perceive things, perceive thoughts, ideas, whatever.
Mm.
I think the more you challenge those limits, our self-imposed limits, the more that is going to open up our perceptions,
Mhm.
of the unseen world, because I think there's I know when I was coming up, and some of the earlier teachers that I had, there was always this kind of hierarchical thing, like, and I'm better than you are, I've been doing this longer than you, so I'm better than you, and
Mm.
always making me kind of doubt myself. And I feel like those were important teachers for me, because it got me to see something that I needed to see, that like, wait a minute, I'm gonna call this out.
I've
We all
never
have
fallen for
these,
that one either, but yes.
I was young, so
Yeah.
we all have these gifts of perception, and um some of us haven't I want to say some of us haven't lost some of them, and some of them we need to work, and some of them we need to recover.
Mhm.
And it's not, I think the minute we start giving our power away to someone who's a healer, someone who's reading energy. And I actually I worked with someone last week that was kind of in this neighborhood, and I guess that's why I'm bringing it up, is that he's not listening to his own voice.
Mm. Mhm.
He's not listening to his own wisdom. He's actually like giving his power away to someone who he perceives to know more than him, right? So this is like the same thing with the guy, our guides and stuff like that. And there's like, I'm going to go to a psychic, and the psychic's going to know something I don't know. And but the truth of the matter is that you could totally know it, but sometimes you just can't get out of the way enough to see it.
I love it for validation. That's what I find.
Yeah.
It's so validating. And then it's like, oh, okay. Okay. This is, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but also I've moved through different layers of that, right? Like I've pushed the limit and then pushed the limit and then pushed the limit.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was going to say we don't start out that way. We totally start out that way. And then it gets get piled up with all this stuff.
We know
Take
our
our way up.
voice. Yeah,
Yeah.
we know the truth of who we are, and we forget it. and then life becomes about recovering the truth of who you are,
Yeah.
and the truth of who you are is you're freaking limitless and powerful,
Yeah.
not powerless, limitless and powerful.
Yes.
And but we've been told that we're not, and we're told to give our power away, and all of these things. And it's letting yourself lean in and discover something that maybe you didn't know, or have the experience that is wild, and you know
Yeah.
that no one else is having but you, because you're unique in that way, you know
And embrace that, celebrate that, and find that safe space to start sharing that.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, because when we do share, that's where it gives permission for us to even investigate this, for ourselves, allow it for ourselves. I mean, heck, you can have such a magical experience just, being outside with your eyes closed and connecting to the earth, and let the earth, hear the voice of Pachamama, or hear the voice of a tree, or, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
and if people say that you're crazy, oh well, you're crazy because you're not letting yourself have this experience.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
so freeing.
Oh my goodness. I just looked at the time and I was like, oh, it's that time again.
Is it really?
It
How about
is.
that? Look at
Um,
that.
if anyone has any comments or thoughts or anything that you want to just throw into the chat while we're just doing our wrap up, we'd love to hear from you. And we always love to hear from you. It's just that we get so deep into things that we often forget to ask. Deb, what's going on in your world right now before we?
Well, yeah, right now I am actually learning a new skill. I'm doing quantum healing hypnotherapy technique by Dolores Cannon. So I'm doing a lot of it's past life regression therapy.
Mhm.
So I'm right now I'm working for free because I'm an intern. So I'm doing a lot of at least 2 to 3 a week. I have people coming over and I'm doing past life regression therapy with them. So I get really good at it. And other than that, and hands-on work, treating, working on paintings. I'm still what I'm offering out there is week-long intensives here in Sedona, which are really like earth connecting. So like in alignment with kind of what we were talking about today,
Mhm.
it helps you clear those things that are in your way that blocks you from the fullness of who you are. And that's kind of what I would say about the unseen world, because you're part of that, if it's true that the seen world is 0.00001 blah blah blah,
Mhm.
and the unseen, that means that you're part of that too. And so this part that you see, feel, and the vehicle that you experience the world with it's the same amount of physical matter as the 0.001%. The
I'm
rest
bigger
of
than this.
you bigger and more powerful. Yeah,
All right, I'll take that. I'll take
yeah.
that. Yeah.
And how about you?
Well, what are we doing? We are, you may have noticed that our channel is now called Heart Centered Academy because we're merging Creative View Healing and Creative View Business into Heart Centered Academy. We're migrating to a new platform. So we're leaving Kajabi and going to System.io. Um, Anytime you make changes, there's a lot of back end things involved. And then, yeah, so we're rebranding, we're migrating, and there's something else in there that I can't think of. It's just three things. Anyways, that's the big news is that we're doing that. We're moving and um, yeah, it's all a lot, but it's super exciting and everyone's energized and everybody's excited. So our plan is we'll be launching on the new site for summer solstice, so June 21
Oh,
is the plan.
perfect. Yeah.
We were promised that that would be a thing that could happen. I'm getting a little more concerned that it might not be, but we're going to breathe through it. I'm going to breathe through
hmm These
it.
things take time. Well, it's interesting, just real quick too. It's like my husband and I are in the cane company that we have, a werewolf gear. We have a new product coming out, and it should have been out in March. And we're still with the factory. We're still, they just sent us another round of prototypes. They didn't use the right metals. So now we're like back on top of that. And it's like, so I totally hear where you're at. So it's delaying getting the product out to people who pre-purchased. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot when
Anytime
you're,
you have to bring in more, like, I built Creative You Healing myself, or Creative You Healing in business myself. And then I brought in team members who work for me. Okay,
Mhm,
great. But now I'm relying on people outside of that to be like, do their part. And then they have other things come up. And I'm like, oh, but wait, but wait. So yes, there's all of those pieces. I'm trying to be very like everything happens for a reason. It's all gonna play out. I just keep doing my part. I just keep doing
mhm.
my part. But yes,
Yeah.
it's uh it's a bit, but yes, it's happening. All of those
Yep.
things are happening. So and in that, we're still Creative You Business, Creative You Healing, they still up and running. All our programs, everything is still going. So
Mhm.
yeah. But well, thank you, everyone. I don't see any questions or thoughts there. So this is
Nope. And
us
they're
for
dropping
another
off.
month. But even if you're I'm trying to get rid of that word. If you're listening to the replay or something pops into your head after, come put it in the comments and I'll reply, and then I sometimes send them to Deb depending on what's said. But yeah, so thank you everyone. Thank you for being here.